Good evening. Thank you for being here. I'm Heidi Zuckerman. I am the Nancy and Bob Magoon CEO and Director here at the Aspen Art Museum. And as you walked in, that was a piece that Lawrence had selected. So we have sort of a multimedia presentation tonight. So tonight's talk with Lawrence Weiner is presented, as always, as part of the Question Lecture Series made possible by the Question Education Fund. We have additional support of the Artist Talk series provided by the Good Works Foundation and Laura Donnelly. Thank you. So Lawrence Weiner was born in New York, where he continues to live and work. He is one of the central figures of conceptual art, and his language-based sculptures, installations, and ephemeral works explore a radical redefinition of the relationship between the artwork and the viewer. His work has been the subject of many solo museum exhibitions, and we are very thrilled to be honoring Lawrence this Friday with the 2017 Aspen Award for Art at Art Crush.
It's nice to be an excuse for a great party.
So I think Lawrence wants to start by saying a few things, and then there's a video that he wants to show, and then we'll move into the slides and have a conversation, and then we'll have time for some questions. So.
Good evening. Thanks for all being here. But I'd like to open up with something that I did because I was given an award, and I was so absolutely overwhelmed that I didn't know how I was supposed to get up and make a speech to the people that were sitting in the audience. It was the BAFTA thing, the Harris Paper Award in London. And I thought about it, and I realized, oh, I've got this material I've done for the radio, for Public Radio Pacifica. I've got this, I've got that. And we made a cartoon that introduces me to people that might have, because the film world has not so much to do with the art world. The only people one knows in the film world are the people who came through you, through me, or through another one into the film world. So this is what I'll show, and then Heidi and I will get into a real conversation. If anybody hears something that they want something to say, please just sort of raise your hand, she pays attention, and we'll just get into it. I don't have any soap to sell. No, I honestly don't. I have a totally different idea of what the use and the function of art is. There are exigencies and necessities of life that mean that you have to enter into a structure in order to be able to, without being a victim, support yourself. Every artist has this problem. And it turns out, I just got this award in Israel, and it was scientists, and scientists have exactly the same problem. I don't have anything against myself, but I don't think I'm all that interesting. But what I make, I find enormous use of. And also, as I'm getting older, I find a lot of use in it to remember why I thought something about something. So please bear with me with my silly cartoon, and then we'll start in. Thank you.
Thank you. I shall try for brevity, as I realize how many other speakers have been. A few proposals as to why we are all here, and perhaps as to where we're all going, are in order. Roma, can we please have some music? Art is not a metaphor upon the relationships of human beings to objects and objects to objects in relation to human beings, but a representation of an empirical existing fact. It does not tell the potential and capabilities of an object, material, but presents a reality concerning that relationship. constant placation of previous aesthetics consumes present resources to the extent that as the needs and desires of a present aesthetic make themselves felt, the resources have been exhausted. Present aesthetic, that's us. The artist's reality is no different than any other reality. It is the content that gives the perceptions and observations of an artist within the presentation art a use factor within the society. The acceptance of the need for this distancing by a society, in fact the need itself by a society for its art to function, has led to the misconception that art and artists are apart from society unless they do not function as artists. There are very few material relationships of human beings to objects that at some stages have not required some form of human being to human being relationship. The utilization of media presents these various relationships at the moment of the presentation of what in essence is a material relationship. The utilization of media as both presentation and representation seems to require no justification other than the presentation itself. Obvious change in the relationship of art to a culture is perhaps that the explanation, the not needed justification, of the existence of art has been allied to the concept of production. This reading, while obviating some form of social unease, is not in fact the case. Art is, in relation to its society, a service industry.
Thank you. And that perhaps is the basis of our conversation. Most people here either have access in public media and all to find out more or less what I've done and what I do. I'm 75 years old and I started showing when I was 18. I can't think of anything more foolish than me standing up here saying, I did this, I did this, I did this, I did that, especially in the age of information as we have it. Let's not waste the time. And Heidi Zuckerman and I have a long-standing conversation going on. And I'd hope you'll all join into it. And it's all about something that at this moment in our life is probably the most important thing. And it's not about lambasting the situations. It's not about, oh my God, the world is collapsing. You can't believe in Darwin here. You can't believe in this here. You can't do that. No, the point of the operation is they are not our parents. We're not supposed to be resisting. We are people with the possibilities of building a culture that has something to do with the people in it itself, instead of the continual trying to put it together to satisfy people who basically have not shown us the right way to go. I mean, all the wars, all the this, all of that, it ain't really what we're about. And art is about the relationship and dignity with every material that you see. I didn't want to pick anything, so the museum itself has chosen some things that Heidi and I may talk about, and they will be a surprise to me. And one of the privileges that I have in my life is that what I did might not have been immediately popular, as they say, but there were large numbers of people who were able to use it to do what they wanted to do with their life. And I think that's what art is about. It's about empowering other people. It's not about taking the resources, people's hard-earned money, and having daycare centers. It's about taking children like happened to me, getting them into the Museum of Modern Art. I knew my Bruegels, I knew this, I knew that. I was a kid, and I was a young kid. I was in junior high school, I think, when it happened. And they sent out passes to the public schools in New York City for the reopening of the Museum of Modern Art. And it blew me away. Literally, I stood there, and it was the first time, and I was a kid coming from a sort of a rather lousy neighborhood, and I got into a very good high school public. And I thought I was hot shit, to tell you the truth. And I walked in, and the first thing I saw was the palace at 4 a.m. in the morning. And I saw that, and I didn't have any idea what I was looking at. And I waited one day when I left work early or something as a kid from school to work, and then ran to the museum the night it was open late. And my golly, I just really got banged out. And the other thing was that I found myself with people, which is an interesting thing, that I was a nice kid, I guess, but I was working. I found myself with people that, yes, you could go in the park and make love with a girl, but they had something to talk about afterwards. It was a change of pace for me. It was no longer talking about refrigerators and things like that. Do you know what I'm trying to say? It opened up for somebody in the South Bronx that there was a social world out there that had to do with looking at things and had to do with what your quest as a human being was. And it was also attractive. Now, wow. And I still say that about the art world. If you're willing to not try to push people out of the way to make a place in a career, and you really make something, wow. Because it enters into a culture, and that culture changes things as we move along. And I'm a lucky person. I don't have to talk about what I've done. It's in books, it's online. But I'd like to talk about what it means and what people can do with it. Because there's a little misunderstanding sometimes. One of the privileges of being reasonably successful in whatever society you find yourself in is that your children can live a comfortable life without having to be like you. And if that's not a reward enough for working hard, I guess I'm talking to the wrong people.
Thank
sorry
you.
about being so long.
No, that's good.
I'm just surprised because I wasn't feeling too well today. I feel like
I knew it would happen. You're a showman
It's you.
at heart. It's me. No, I think it's you. So you said something to me the other day about not wanting, and you've already alluded to that you think you're not that interesting, which one could debate that, but it's really your art that's what's interesting. And you talked to me a little bit about the importance of your work being seen in the public realm, and you just referenced a little bit about growing up in the Bronx and the opportunities that art has afforded you. But can you talk a little bit about what it feels like to encounter your work in the public and why that matters to you, that diverse audience?
Why it matters is
Yes.
that my dream is, and there were artists that I really respected that I think screwed up on that one, not to tell people what to do with what you made. Make something that can't be used as sexist, racist, or other way, and just put it out there. Let people do with it what they want. You are not, it's see if they can use it. Art's made for use. And public, artists are the public, just as everybody else. Artists, we pay taxes, take our kids to the dentist. What difference is it from us to anybody else? Really.
So some of your work is placed in really sort of unexpected places, like these.
Manhole covers?
Yes.
That was one of the projects that I did. That was a dream. The people at the the group that were putting it together, Tom and at the Public Art Fair, came and we talked. And unbeknownst to me, they didn't think it had a chance in hell to go and get them to do it. So they drove me, which was silly because I live on West Village, to a place that I walked through as a child to get to high school from the 3rd Avenue subway. And it was Con Ed. And they dropped me in an office in Con Ed, and I was supposed to talk them into doing this project. And they would, the contingencies would have been paid for, there was no different, but they had to really go with it because they could all, the only ones that could. I was stuck with this man, and I'm sitting there. I mean, he didn't seem to be the person I'd be getting along with. And we started to chat. He was a New York City person, and his daughter was going to the high school that I went to. And we got on. And from that moment on, it was a dream. They drove me to the Foundry. And the people in the Foundry were like East Coast New Yorker type people in Long Island. And the only thing is, they said that they cannot take me to see the factory. That it really is not so bad, but it looks worse. And I remembered that there's people breaking up steel and all with bare feet. But I didn't do that, but they sponsored it. Con Ed sponsored it, and it was a popular one. And the Foundry sponsored it in the Public Art Fund. And then both of them told the Public Art Fund, make sure that the guy gets something. Now, that is when you're dealing with civilization. When people see that there's a positive gesture, a positive influence. They don't have to like it. They don't have to think you're even intelligent. But it is part of their culture that they can accept, and it's something they can help. That's like a Boy Scout helping somebody across the street that can't see. That's what our life is about. It's about the kindness of strangers. But once you integrate into a culture, you're not a stranger.
It's a nice idea. So I'll ask you something about that in a minute, but I just want to share 19 locations. Each one reads, quote, in direct line with another and the next. It's a reference to the grid of New York City, and the statement that you released said that it's about the relationship of human beings to objects in relationship to human beings.
Yes, and it's in line with, in direct line with another and the next. And what is built upon that is that New Yorkers don't look at the sky to find out where they are and what they're doing, because you often don't see anything. They look down. And as long as, and my dream, I'm sorry I'm repeating myself, it's sort of trite, but my dream of interference in the world is not to point fingers at people and fuck up their day on the way to work. It's to fuck up their whole life.
Okay,
I'm
so
very serious, and it's like, why do we do this job that is, for the majority of people in the world, for most of their life, is not well paid, not even looked up to or anything else, because you really want to give people another way to be able to be functioning within their society. And art does that, because it doesn't have a metaphor. You don't have to accept a person's values and structure and moral structure in order to be able to use what they make. And once you've used it, all you have to do is credit it. And it's yours. And all art is the same. What you learn from a Mondrian, what you learn from a Lawrence Weiner, what you learn from somebody else, immediately once it enters into the culture, it's just part of your life. And it's useful, it's not useful. I used to think it was nutmeg that you put into dishes when you cooked. Okay?
So you just kind of referenced the idea of kind of the utility of art.
Yes.
And we had some conversations earlier in the week when Thomas was speaking as well about, you know, what people need from art and how sort of acceptable that is to kind of need things from art, what art can do.
Well, if you don't need something from art, there's no reason for it to exist. There is no human being that we know of, unless it's somebody that's in some kind of a religious rapture, which I can't get involved in what their sense of satisfaction might be. But when you look at the world, very often you need something to give you a key to understand how those things relate. And all art does, all kinds of art, to show you what the relationship of a blue paint on canvas or with a human being, the relationship of whatever materials we're doing. And that's what I do. And I was so happy that something that was part of my credence for years, that I make a specific object that has no specific form. I was asked if it was all right to paraphrase it because it was something that you would, another artist said, yes, a specific object with no specific form. And that means leaves the door open. There were artists that I respected overly that would tell like that, I'm an artist, but they made a mistake. They told people how far to stand from a painting. Everybody's eyes are different. They told people how the width. No, you can't tell people that. You have to make something that is so put together, and any artist that you're speaking to would agree, any musician, that when you have it, you don't have a conversation with a culture. You don't have a conversation with history. You don't have to know history. It helps. It also gives you a greater enjoyment. You don't have to. You walk in, and that's it. It's between you and what you see. That's what makes a Cy Twombly painting, or Carl Andre. All of these things, diverse, different kinds of things, all have a function within our life. That's all art is. It's just a little thing you change. It ain't a big deal. It's a big deal for the people making it. It's a big deal to keep it in the culture. But it has to be kept as what it is. You shouldn't teach children that they should learn how to make art. No, you don't. You walk in and you look at something and it's something you can't figure out, and let the child figure out what to do about something they can't figure out, and let them be in awe. AWE. It might be the answer. It might be the reason we put our hard-earned lives and money into making museums public. It's not to teach people how to be artists. It's like a clinic. It's not there to just to teach people how to be a nurse practitioner. It's to take care of what the matter is. And right now, we have a mess morally, and the art world has made a mess morally. They don't know the difference between a found object and stealing. They really don't, because nobody told them. They were badly brought up. I'm very, very serious. When you have an educational system, but we let the art world let the educational system take over, and then they let people cheat. If you go to the right school, you don't have to speak another language to get a master's degree. If you go to the wrong school, you do. That's not what art's about. Art's about putting something up that nobody even knows where the hell it came from. And they see it, and it means something to them, and they can use it. That's the same as how many people in this room's whole lives were changed because one night in a restaurant, a bar, or otherwise, they listened to the words of the song.
So
and that's all art is, it's the words of the song.
Okay, so is that one of the reasons why you use text in your work?
No, I began to use language because I seem to have become okay as a painter and all the other stuff. But it lost its ability to go as far as I had the privilege of getting by doing it. So I began to use language because it's language and the material referred to. And it took away the idea of the artist as the genius. It took you out of that context. It put you in a totally different context. And it let you look at something. You didn't know what it was. You didn't even know it was supposed to be art. And then all of a sudden people started putting it together that it was art. Because it wasn't welcome in most of the venues, you know. Most museums wouldn't show it. Most dealers were not interested in it. And it entered in, and the Academy came in, and then they said that it's special. And the whole point is it wasn't special, it had a meaning.
Well, so where did the text come from?
What do you mean, come from?
Well,
I go in a studio, I'm a studio artist,
okay.
And I take a piece of concrete and I take some pour concrete, or I play with material, or I see something in the street that I would watch. And you begin to put them together, and then you present them. And I found that presenting them in language, they didn't get involved in whether you can get the thing. I can draw, whether you can get the curlicue correctly and things like that. It became what you saw.
Right.
You took it, you used it, and you moved on. maybe you went back too because it was useful. That's about it. That's where the language came from. And it's the most open-ended thing. A piece of stone is a piece of stone in any language. When it has no metaphor, you don't have to know its culture.
Okay, so the absence of metaphor
is important.
Is very important.
Yeah.
And some of the language in your work is seemingly instructive.
No, it's not. It's always in the past tense from the 60s on. It's not instructive. It just says this is what happens when you did this.
So it's practical?
Yes, it is, as a matter of fact, because if you don't understand the dignity and the relationship of the stones you walk on, you don't have nothing. Because that's what art's about. Art's like from a flower painting to my works, to another person's work. All it is allowing people to see a dignity between the relationships of those materials. And with that dignity, you can build the way that you can live your life.
Right, so the dignity between the materials is then, and I understand we're not for metaphor or for instruction, but it sets up a relationship where people can then potentially think about how they exist as humans, how they interact with each other, and it brings that notion of dignity
Yes.
to a broader public.
Totally, and it also allows people to be able to understand that maybe a piece of wood that's milled here and a piece of wood that's milled in Japan doesn't look the same, but in fact it is exactly the same. It's like my dream. I thought that it was going to happen with digital theory. Pixels don't care who they work with. Pixels don't have any hierarchy of which pixel does what and which pixel is more important, quite frankly. So if the pixel is there without a hierarchy, I hope they begin to understand that you can't base anything you do on art history. It's the same as medicine can't help you if it bases only on past. Everything has to take you and give you a dignity in response. You have to take people seriously. And that was the trouble in the 50s. That's led to the whole McCarthy things. In the 50s, they were only really interested in attacking rock and roll. I mean, I'm old enough to know this. 1954 was a major American disaster. Their children were dancing to a rhythm that they couldn't understand. The only trouble is we're stuck now from 1954 with exactly the same rhythm.
So when we're looking at the work, is there a sense of humor in the work?
It depends what it's about.
Okay, and so, and the seriousness of the text?
I don't know what you mean serious. Look, I'm a grown-up person. Would I spend my time sitting in a room doing something if I didn't think it was serious?
No, I don't mean serious as opposed to whimsical or frivolous. I'm using serious as kind of the antithesis of humor.
Oh, I mean dullness. One aspires. One aspires not to be.
Dull? No, I don't think dull. That's not.
I mean, they used to put clocks in the backs of auditoriums when you had to speak, so that you could see maybe you're just passing the point where it's going to be dull for somebody. See, I don't know what people do. I have been very privileged in being able to, with perhaps in bad circumstances, difficult, being able to live the life that was necessary in order to make what I make. And I think that's what I'd like to see everybody have. Somehow or other, you put in a day's work, and they should open the museums at the right time for people who work all day as well. No, they should, and why not? I don't see any reason, people work in restaurants at night, why can't they work in a museum at night? As long as you're getting paid a decent wage. But it would be nice to leave it a little more open for people. Because once you understand what you're dealing with, it genuinely allows you to find your place in the sun. And finding your place in the sun may not be important for anybody else, but it sure as hell is important for yourself. Yeah.
So, this work here,
Yes.
it's the first one that we've had on the screen, which is in multiple languages.
Yes. I made a show in a place called Malaga, which is sort of famous for being violently anti-immigrant, shall we say. But there were people who were integrated, and I made the show about Cordoba. Cordoba was when Christian, Muslim, and Jewish culture all came together until it was destroyed. But so when I made the museum show, they were having trouble with interpersonal relationships there. I did a very big poster, and the show was in Arabic, English, and Spanish. And they were a little bit terrified, but the woman that was running it was really quite nice, and she said, okay, we'll do it, and we'll do the poster. You know what happened? Absolutely nothing. There were people in the museum with rags around their head because they could read it. People have this vision that art is anti-everything. Everybody hates art. As a matter of fact, they don't. They may not like what you like, but people as a general rule do not hate art. And they really don't look down on artists. It's a kind of a middle-class structure that hates everything that doesn't look like it fits in. But most people don't care if they, gee, look at that. You know, just looking at artists, they can look at a Pollock, they can look at, and then they can look at a painting of the sea. It's all the same. It's people trying to communicate with each other. And when I use language, Heidi, the whole point is that strokes with your hand and strokes with things are language. So it's not radical. I've never been a radical artist. It was just that they didn't quite figure out how to deal with it early on. So it was mostly in the hands of artists and people who were more than willing to use it because it helped them understand their own job and their own profession. So this radical thing is nonsense. You cult somebody maybe when they're 80, but I mean, I can't say what you're supposed to do.
Well, I think it's interesting to sit and have a conversation about art, and some of the ideas that you express as an artist and a person and a human sitting here are incredibly profound. And for me, they are, well, yes,
Okay.
just accept it for a second. And they are parallel to the ideas that are contained in your works as well. And it's an interesting balance to navigate as a person sitting and hearing you speak, and also additionally as a viewer of your works of art, and reconciling what goes into the work and what comes, you know, out of your mouth. So, and it's not that they're irreconcilable.
No,
it's
but
about
they don't mesh.
Sometimes they do.
But it is the point of the operation to make them mesh. And sometimes you hit it, and sometimes you don't.
Right.
Yeah. Were there any questions in the audience about the activity? You see, I don't consider what I do my practice. It's a praxis. I think I know what I'm doing when I do it. So it's not practice.
Yeah.
But I love the woman I lived with, Alice, one day said, you know, the Duke Ellington statement is about the best. When they questioned him, 2 questions. Why are your musicians and also loyal to you? And he said, I pay them. And the second one was, it was a legitimate answer. And the second one was, how do you define an artist or a musician? And he answered, somebody who practices every day. And that's a very nice answer. And I try to live my life that way. When you find yourself in circumstances where you can't get the studio facilities you need, you don't have the wherewithal, you can do it in the kitchen. You can do it in the workshop. You can do it on the street. You don't have to. It doesn't make it any better or any worse. You do what you have to do in order to do it. If you want to cook an egg, you've got to find a match to light the fire. And I try to be the match and the structure of the fire, and then people can make the kind of fire they want. I hope they're not repeating that too often. What is that? No, it's nice. I was reluctant to have things shown because then, you know, if you have a long-term career, it's too many things.
Questions from the audience?
Yes, please.
Could you speak a little bit about your relationship as an artist to your notion of God?
Yes, as a matter of fact, why not? No, I mean, we were all raised with people who had some concept of some God somewhere. I am one of those people that probably believes in a Godhead, in a superior being, but I'm not sure. But I do know that if whatever they've done, because this is all sort of working, they got it right. And that means you don't have to play these games. You don't smell bad to the person that created you. You don't this and you don't that. That's about it. That's my relationship. I figure whatever I've gotten from the traditions that are around me about how you treat people or dogs or cats or animals all came from the same sense of yourself. And I don't have any relationship to any organized religion, other than I studied them, just to find out what was going on. But it didn't help me a lot with my work. I think the Godhead is something far more important to do than worry about whether my last exhibition was good or bad.
Are you talking about God or are you talking about love?
I'm talking about what we're allowed to know as God, which is organized religions all over the world. That's what I'm talking about. As far as your relationship with a spiritual God, that's none of my business. I have one, and it suffices for me. But I don't think it would suffice for anybody else. That's my feelings about it.
All right, who's next?
Oh, hi.
Laura?
Yes.
So when I look at your art, I really relate to the beauty of the text, how it's done.
Thank you.
So I would really like to know about your relationship with the people who paint for you, who make the art on the wall for you, and how do they regard it? Is it part of their art as well?
No, the majority are really professional. But
So, sorry,
usually-
did people hear the question?
Oh, it's how do you relate to the people that make it possible for you to see something? The people who put it on the wall, put it up on the building, and do other things. I think it will be different for each individual person who does it. There's one crew in New York who seems to be quite devoted to what I do. And there are people in California that the same way. But there are people that I never heard of, they never heard of me, and they do a wonderful job. If people do their job and you build something that requires people to do their job, it usually works all right for all hands on deck. When you try to cheat, it don't work. And most people don't like to put in a lot of time with somebody who's cheating. If life's hard, make it work. If it doesn't work, say I can't do it. But that's getting back to the question about God and religion and things. If it works, it works. And that's not a mystical statement or anything. You know it works. It's like there are 50 kinds of tortillas you can make and 50 kinds of omelets. But when you're eating one that works, it works. And you eat the one that doesn't, you get by. And most art is it's an open profession. It's the last profession besides fashion where you don't need a certificate. You need to put something on the table that is of use and of interest to people, and that's it.
Well, I mean, that's one of the incredible powers of your work, is that whatever your intention was, it speaks to people. It makes sense, it matters. It affects how people see who they are,
Yes.
and hopefully it affects how they interact with each other and how they exist in the world.
That's a great compliment from you, because art is made by people for other people. An artist doesn't have to make art. They know what it looks like, or else they wouldn't be able to do it. That's that nonsense that they tried to do when they didn't know what to do with the work, the way it was changing. Conceptual art. What nonsense, as if somebody building a painting didn't have to know what size, buy the paint, mix the paint. It all just doesn't come out of magic from art history. You don't open an art history can and all of a sudden know how to do something. I'm very serious. It's like, I don't know where this all comes from, this nonsense about radical, non-radical. It's part of our culture. It's not radical or not radical. If somebody's singing a song or music comes on and it's lousy, but it doesn't mean that its intention was lousy. So it doesn't lose its status as the endeavor of human beings. It just has no use. It's like a pair of shoes that the heel is just a millimeter on the wrong side, but you can wear it if it's cold.
I can actually think of nothing worse than being of no use.
Either can I, but that's the frightening thing, which I'm beginning to, having been, I keep reading things, having gotten ill and all of that, took me into another state. I began to look at what basically was important, and it wasn't about the things that people think it is. I think it's important for art to enter into the culture and to make it possible for children of any class that make art that's worthwhile to be able to survive comfortably. My generation didn't really have that as a benefit, but we have the possibilities to do it now. But that means it's not just a hobby. It's like it's wonderful to let people go to medical school. You never know what the hell's going to come out of it. You put things together in universities, and I got the Wolf Prize with the guy who did immune theory, kept saying, but I'm not a doctor, but he did his job correctly. I think it's wonderful to open the doors, let people come in. Let people make art, but don't encourage them. Don't use the resources that should go to some young person in Denver, in this place, in that place, that's trying to make art that didn't come from the right direction, and make it possible for them to show. But don't go out and start looking at people who are quite satisfied with what their life is. Say, let us teach you how to make art. It won't make you a better person. Making art because you have to makes you. John McCracken once embarrassed people, but I was so charmed. I was at dinner with John McCracken and another artist, and he got a little bit drunk or something, and looked up and said, "I'm so happy to be with you." And there was another artist there. I said, "Why?" Because you guys really believe in it, boy, girl, that making art makes you a better person. And you know what? I do.
And I do too. And I think one of our collective goals is to convince people through whatever efforts we have that art is actually essential to survival. So when we think about what we need as a culture, that art becomes essential. Alan?
Your mission is to influence the world, the people around you?
No, my mission is...
Wait, let me finish my question. What is your influence around you? Who's influenced you? What influences you in terms of the way you think about your art and the way you go about your life?
It's not just artists that influence me, but the trouble with that is that you're going to leave somebody out. And when you get old enough, as you know, each stage is really, again, the Tennessee Williams autobiography, The Kindness of Strangers. Each stage is a strange. When you asked me about the installations, I was shocked. I was in Chicago and I had an installer and we became friends, and I helped when we got him to New York. He began a career as an artist, but he worked as an installer. I had no idea that somebody would get so enthusiastic about what they were doing. The same as the atomic vinyl in New York. I was so pleased and touched when I got into that situation, and I found that the people that were putting it up felt empowered by the whole thing. I arrived late at the Whitney for their opening thing, when the installations were going on, and I walked in and I walked past this man and I recognized him and I wondered what he's doing here. And I looked up and they had come, according to my drawing, done the installation perfectly, and were very happily proud of themselves, the same as when you're a kid and you make a soda in the candy store, or you're a kid and you're making short order cooking, and it's well, you're proud of yourself. There's no reason why people, because they're artists, can't go and say, wow, got it right. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with that being worthwhile if you really have a love of your culture? Anything you put into it that aids and abets it is good. That's, you know, I'm sorry, I don't have a lot to say. Like I said, I'm now at the other cusp where I can do anything I want. People say, why don't you do that? The only thing that holds me back is my own physicality, and sometimes I'm not good enough to do some things. I don't know how. But that's it. So I'm not in the same position of why we have a museum and why we have this. I don't need the empowerment, I just need the encouragement and the support structure. I don't need it, and I don't have to have anybody blow smoke on my ass. No, I'm very serious. I'm good enough to go in and operate on somebody's appendix and think there's a good chance it's going to all work out okay, and that's when I start a body of work or a show. There's a good chance that it's all going to sort of work out okay. And you know what, if it don't, you do it different the next time.
That's right. Alison, do you have a question? Okay. Yeah, Weiner.
I was wondering, you talked a lot about how like art should be looked at as useful or not useful. Does it affect you like who the artist is? Like if, say that someone isn't really someone that you'd normally look up to, but you enjoy their work, like how do you think about that?
That's the problem. I have to disassociate it in my head. But if it crosses certain lines, I can't disassociate. But very few artists cross those lines. You know, somebody doesn't have to like your aesthetic, but that doesn't make them a fascist or anything. So, no, it doesn't. That's a word that has lost its meaning. Authoritarian is another story. We're watching that in the United States. We're watching that in Istanbul. Okay, there's not much you can do except remember that resistance is not a word unless it's your parents. You make something, they are resisting, you're changing the culture. They are resisting your desires. They are resisting your willingness to work in a society. They're the ones that are resisting. You're not resisting anything. They don't have the damn right to be saying what they're saying. Art doesn't tell anybody they have to do anything. You can walk past it and it doesn't ruin your life. But once you enter into it, it can. And I hope it does. In the best of manners, and it's really totally positive.
So I think that's kind of the perfect way to end, because we always say, well, if you don't like something that you see, just look away. You know, so museums are not courtrooms, they're not hospitals, they're not places where you have to go. You have that option. And sometimes I think people forget that we all have many, many more options than we think we have.
That's the whole purpose of a museum, is to put the accomplishments of everybody out and let the next generation, or the generation living through things, walk in and decide what is an accomplishment and what isn't. And if they can do that, then they do it. Because, yeah, of course I would like the world to be the way I would like it to be. But it ain't my right as an artist. What I have to do is put something out that if somebody's silly enough to get involved, it'll screw them up. No, and it'll screw them up in a way that they may get more out of their life, and in a way that they can give back more without it being within a prescribed situation.
So one of the opportunities that we have here is to continue collectively to examine the complexities of art.
Absolutely.
And what it means and how we know it and who we are. So thank you all for being here.
Yes,
thank you, Lawrence, for engaging
No, thank you for
the
your
conversation.
patience. If anybody in the audience knew how hard it was even for artists or musicians to understand themselves what they're doing sometimes, you would feel a lot better when you're perplexed by a work of art.
It's good to be confused sometimes. So on that note, to celebrate the confusion that we all find ourselves in sometimes, I invite you to join us for a reception now up here. So thanks so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you.